Guys, welcome back to The What Life. This week is a little bit different. Not only is it a vlog, but we have put together the ultimate Mallorca 312 guide. When we signed up, we knew nothing about the event. So basically, I went on a bit of a hunt and I couldn't find out a huge amount about some of the more detailed intricacies of how the race is run. So we wanted to change that, and this is the ultimate guide on how to finish the Mallorca 312. So enjoy the vlog, we hope it helps, and feel free to send it to anyone that you might know who wants to do the event. 4 AM start on race day. Pitch black outside. We've got an hour's drive to the start line, or 50-minute drive to the start line. Just to stand in the dark on the start line. Race day. How do you feel?
Tired. I don't feel good, if I'm honest. Which I'm annoyed about. I feel like if I had a good night's sleep, I'd have felt better.
We got to sleep early, before 10.
You got what?
We'll sleep before 10.
I don't think I did though. That's the thing. I don't think I did. I think I got to sleep at like 11 and then had like a bit of deep sleep. But I'll be fine when I'm there.
So we were staying in Palma, which is on completely the other side of the island. They're getting back from a night out.
We used to get to go back to bed.
This meant we had to get up a little bit earlier, and we gave ourselves a hard cut-off time of leaving by 4:30 AM, something Paris wasn't overly happy about.
Seems absurd putting sun cream on at this hour, doesn't it?
In the pitch black.
Yeah. Have you done your neck?
No, I'm going to put that sunblock on. I'm going to put life jacket sunblock on my neck.
Hashtag ad.
Hashtag freebie. That's great.
This, honestly, this sun cream is so good.
This is the reality of doing this stuff. To be fair, it's 5:30 in the morning and it's not cold. But that does mean it's going to get boiling hot today. Yeah, yes I do, yeah. So this is us in the start pen. Well, actually, we are queuing before we even get into the start pen. We got there about 10 to 6, and by that point, there were just thousands of people already lined up, just trying to get into the start pen for the race. So let's dive into some more info about the Mallorca 312. There's actually 3 races that all take place at exactly the same time. You've obviously got the 312 race, the 225, and the 167. The 312 is obviously the big daddy, and you can clearly see the point that if you don't make the cutoff, you don't get to head south inland to do that last little extra loop. The 225 and the 167 are the more popular events by participation numbers. That's because they take in the most scenic part of the route on the north of the island, rolling through the big climbs, and then head straight back to the finish in Arcadia. And you don't have to do that extra little loop that you do on the 312. Now seems a great time to talk about start pens. Genuinely, some people get here at 4:30 AM.
6:05.
We've almost been up 2 hours. You'll see just why getting here super early is more beneficial a little bit later. Here's the info that was in the participation guide. You can see that the different races are meant to be in different pens, but the reality is this just does not happen.
Right, we finally made it through. Max, how do you feel?
I feel good, I'm excited. It's got a bit lighter now, and
Yeah, it has actually, isn't it?
yeah, so it's about what, like 25 past 6 in the morning, meant to start at 6:30. It's so busy, so many people.
I still need a wee.
Paris and I were firmly at the back of the pen for the start, which basically has a massive knock-on effect for later in the race if you're trying to complete the 312. So this is the actual start time. It's about 6:40 in the morning. You can see from the cutoffs that we're already 10 minutes behind before we've even got over the line, and it'll be a further 15 minutes before Paris and I even get over the start line itself. I thought this was quite interesting. This is the Strava flybys. I wanted to have a look at it and kind of see how we compared to some of the other riders. You can see one lady at the front kind of heads off really super early. She actually set off at 5:30. I did ask her in the comments on Strava what she was doing, not to try and shame her or anything, just to kind of see if the roads were closed, and said that the roads weren't closed when she did the climbs. She said she did it to wait for a friend at one on the top of the cols, but from her Strava flyby she was there for about 15 minutes before she then set off herself, so it's not like she waited too long. Her Strava file does show her crossing the finish line and I presume getting a medal from the race, although I did check the official timing and she wasn't in any of the standings. So if you are super worried about some of the shorter races and you're out there for a fun time and you just want to get yourself a medal, I guess you could set off super early before the official start time and make your own way to the first checkpoint. This isn't what Paris and I did though, and we set off with everybody else at around 6:54 in the morning. We were in big groups, and my pro tip to anyone that wanted to do the 3-1-2 is please don't go easy off the start line. It's dead flat for the first 10 to 15 miles, and I'd really suggest trying to tag on to some of the stronger riders and just basically sit on their wheels until you reach at least the very first climb. Riding the start in a big group was a lot of fun. I don't know what looks better, the sunrise or Paris on her MV Mille.
Just settling to the first climb. What's the first climb, Paris?
What?
15k. 15k. Climbing. How gorgeous is this? Perfect morning. It's going to get really hot today, which we're not too excited about.
I am. Get a tan. I won't even get a tan, will I? I'm going to be paler.
You're the most reflective person out here. Bike safety 101.
Yeah.
Right, first climb. This is the big one. First is the worst out here. Look at this.
My bum is really numb.
I can't get over how many people are on this climb. It's insane. 7.3 miles to go. First climb's 1,000 meters. Right?
Yeah, it's just straight in this way.
Yeah, it's painful. Painfully slow. Go, I'm with you, so if you want to push on.
My second tip for the day is to absolutely hammer some of the downhills early on in the race. I genuinely think we didn't push hard enough, knowing how close we were to the cutoffs later in the day. I set up my Garmin to show my average speed for the day, knowing that we had to keep it over 14 miles an hour. Pushing on the downhills is a nice easy way to get a couple of extra miles per hour average over the course of the day without having to put in that extra bit of effort on the uphill. The first climb is the biggest of the day and it doesn't matter which of the events you were doing. Everyone kept telling us make sure you don't go too hard on the first climb, and I still actually 100% agree with that. You don't need to push it too hard because everyone's kind of moving at the same speed, and the reality is making the first checkpoint isn't actually that difficult, even though we were set off 25 minutes after the actual start time.
How you doing?
I'm actually doing okay. I definitely think I've overdone something on the sugars though, because my tummy is killing me.
Yeah.
It's like
So solids from
that's
now
not
on.
even on me, do you realise?
First 50k done. Hoping you can hear this. 50k done. Feeling good. We're at the Twin Lakes. Oh, here's the feed stop. Something nice for the camera.
Oh, I'm
Come
so
on.
happy. I feel good though. I genuinely feel good.
Where are we?
We're in Mallorca.
You can now see the effect that being in the back of the pen has had on our day already. We're 11 minutes behind the cut-off time. Not only that, but the checkpoint is super busy and you couldn't ride straight through.
Right, we're 50k and this is the first stop and it's absolute carnage. We're going to push through. We don't feel like we need to stop really. We got a load of food, gels and water. That's all we need. Absolute carnage. Sorry, dude. Right, first stop, no stop. Straight through, on we go. There she is. That's good, we're good, that's good. It's great to get that. We feel good. 2 hours, 50k.
In all seriousness guys, we saw a lot of people falling over on their bikes at the checkpoints, so spend a bit of time getting used to clipping in and clipping out and really kind of dialing in some of your slower speed skills. From all the other videos I've seen, people were able to cycle through the first 1 or 2 checkpoints at least. We had a very different experience, and there were so many people and they were so busy that checkpoints actually became a massive part of our day that was really slowing us down. You'll see more of that later. Now's probably a great time to tell you a little bit more about our bikes. Bike choice is very important if you're going to try and make the Mallorca 312. Both Paris and I are on MV Miles, which have a very light frame. Frame itself is under 900 grams. We have the same wheel set on, which is the MV Foundation 45s, and we both have 31mm MV SES tyres with a super low rolling resistance, which actually made a lot of difference come later in the race when things started to flatten out. We also have the Shimano 8150 Di2 group set with a 51:34 ratio on the front ring.
Just hit 100k, which is really damn good going. I'm really happy. It's been really cloudy and overcast until now. Now it's getting warm. How are you feeling, Paris?
Waldo, no te dejes mucho, que si no, no nos
What's the
vemos.
plan?
Panic when the sun comes out. Refill drinks. I don't. What food do they have? Do they have anything?
I'm not sure if
really
this is
do
a
need
food
to wait.
stop, but this is carnage. This is where you kind of lose a bit of time, huh? It's not that we're going to worry about it.
We do actually have more to lose.
Yeah.
Right, I've literally had the rest of my water and whatnot. I would love to use water today, rather than having to get my arsehole out.
Yeah. Right, the plan is quick water stop. Paris will pee, then we'll go. That's the plan anyway.
So you can really see just how crazy these checkpoints get if you're at the middle or the back of the race. We're now actually 20 minutes ahead of the cutoff, and this is just how busy it is. Paris went for a pee and then we filled our water bottles. We didn't actually have enough time, or we didn't feel like we had enough time to grab some food or even a can of Coke. It was so busy we just wanted to get back on the road. All in all, we didn't actually take that much time, or we felt like we didn't, but the stop itself was 21 minutes just to fill water bottles. We might have arrived at the checkpoint with time to spare, but by the time we left, we were back to cutting it fine.
Very quick update. We went through the checkpoint at 100k, carnage. So we filled our water bottles.
No, I filled the water bottle.
Paris filled the water bottles, but we didn't get any food. So we're relying on the gels and stuff that we have, but we're good. It's definitely getting hotter now. But 100k, 1/3 of the climbing, no, almost half the climbing, 1/3 of the race distance. We're getting there, feeling good.
Despite Paris wanting to take a nap by the side of the road, we were moving pretty well, and after the second checkpoint, things really start to spread out, and you can take advantage of the fact that this is a completely closed road course. This section is on both the 312 and the 225 events, but we have said goodbye to the 167 riders. This end of the island is absolutely gorgeous, and Paris and I had ridden it a few days before when we took Paris on our longest ever cycle ride, which was 130k.
173 what?
Heart rate.
I'll slow it down a bit. We've made it all the way over to the other side of the island. Time to descend and then start heading back.
We didn't manage to record anything at the third checkpoint, but it was very much the same as the second. Really overcrowded, too many cyclists, 14 taps for everyone to fill up their water bottles. Took us about 15 minutes, but we did manage to get some food and a couple of Coca-Colas. So this is going to need some explaining, and I'll be honest with you, it very much caught me by surprise. This group that's just caught us up are the sweepers, and they ride in the white and green polka dot tops. I had really been keeping an eye on our average speed and making sure that we maintained at least a 15 mile an hour average, which is 1 mile an hour over what we actually needed to do. The reason I say this race is complicated is because it's a bit front loaded. Basically, you need to do the first 2/3 quicker or at a faster pace than you do for the actual last third.
Can't drop this group now.
Okay, this is actually quite difficult to explain, but I'm going to do my best. Paris and I jumped in on the peloton, and basically we just had to try and keep pace with everyone else. As you can see, we've done 105 miles and we're trying to keep a pace of 24 miles an hour. Our average pace at this point is close to 14.9 miles per hour for the average of the ride, and we've been riding for 7 hours. So in theory we should have no problem making the cut-offs, however the group was moving quite quickly. It was at this point that Paris turned to me and said that not only has she run out of water, but if the pace was to stay this fast, she probably wouldn't be able to maintain that for the rest of the race. Bear in mind, we still had 90 miles or 150k to go, so that was very understandable. This was where we decided that if the pace was to stay this fast and we couldn't hold on to the peloton, we'd have to drop down to the 225 and we wouldn't get to do the final loop for the 312. But who really knows what was going through Paris's head, because after all this race tactic chat, the next thing she goes on and asks me is this.
You've got the car keys, haven't you?
We basically have 5 hours to do the next 80 miles. I hope you can hear that. 4.5 hours to do 80 miles.
Okay, you're going to have to forgive me, but my numbers were a little bit off. We've actually just left the 4th checkpoint. So while it looks like we're 6 minutes behind the cutoff, the truth is we actually arrived with the sweepers to checkpoint 4 bang on time. Checkpoint 4 wasn't too bad. This is where you actually join up with the 225 riders again, so it was actually quite busy. Not overly crowded though. Managed to grab ourselves some water and some food. I went for a quick pee, and then we set off on our way. It was actually at this point I thought we were ahead of the sweeper group, but it didn't take long before we actually realised that we'd been chasing them for the last maybe 25 minutes. The pace in the peloton this time, however, was actually a lot slower.
So we have 90k to go. We're sat in the peloton group. Basically everyone, I think. Except for a few of the faster people. And I guess we just do this for the rest of the day. 4.5 hours to 90k, 1,200 meters. Let's get it done. This is brutal, this race. Way more tough than I thought it was going to be. What do you think?
Yeah, this isn't enjoyable. I lie, I'm half enjoying it. It's a struggle when it's like so fast and just full on.
It's definitely a performance-based event.
There's no fucking rest.
Yeah.
The only way I can describe it is by saying that it didn't exactly feel like the pacing was very even. Now that we passed checkpoint 4, it kind of felt like it was more of a relaxed group ride with a peloton just holding on, not really pushing too hard. Whereas before getting into checkpoint 4, we'd actually been hammering it quite hard, and it was quite tough to actually just stay on the group. From what I can tell, having spoken to a load of people before and after the event, this is the thing that catches most people out. The pacing from checkpoint to checkpoint just isn't very consistent. My only piece of advice is dive in on the peloton and work hard to stay in the group.
Just left the penultimate stop ahead of the chase group, so they should catch us up and then we can cruise with them. I probably got food everywhere. This is brutal. The whole event is brutal. You've got to be quick.
So hopefully you can start to see what I mean. When we got to the last checkpoint and we'd left it, we were 6 minutes behind the cutoff. We've just left the second last checkpoint and we're now 15 minutes ahead of the cutoff, having left the checkpoint. We arrived with the sweepers and the peloton, and we still had enough time to grab ourselves some Coca-Cola, some food, and then refill our bottles. We didn't exactly hang around too long, but it was about the same amount of time that we spent at the last checkpoint, so we weren't exactly rushing. But when we did leave, we saw that the sweeper group was sat on the floor. I think they were maybe having some beers, but they didn't look like they were in as much of a rush as they had been in the last couple of checkpoints. So it's just not a very evenly weighted race when it comes to moving from checkpoint to checkpoint. We thought that if we were going to leave the checkpoint ahead of the sweep group, they might end up catching us up. But here I am, sat on Paris's chain, she's pulling 50 kilometers an hour, I'm happily sitting there filming her. We actually never saw the sweepers or the peloton again for the entirety of the rest of the race, and as you'll see, we kind of nudge our way even more ahead of the cut-off times as we get closer and closer to the finish. The vibe at the last checkpoint was a little bit weird but very cool, given that we haven't actually finished the race just yet, but you can see that we're now 48 minutes ahead of the cut-off, so there's tons of breathing room. I don't really know how this happened, but it's definitely a front-weighted race. So that was Paris telling me that she's all about the business now and she doesn't want to stop at this checkpoint. I think the race is designed so that you can spend a bit of time here, and they were giving out free beers from what I can tell. So if you want, you can make it here, stop, have a beer, and then take your celebratory roll back into town. From here, it's actually all downhill, and that's not just metaphorical. Physically, it's just a downhill stroll on some very clean and straight roads. It was clearly absolutely blowing Paris's mind that anyone would stop before the end of a race to sit down and have a beer and have a relax. So at least we were agreed on the fact that we should keep on moving and this wasn't going to be a very long stop. This was actually super easy to fill our water bottles, grab ourselves a Coca-Cola, and we didn't actually bother with any food. We did have a few gels that I just polished off. Paris didn't have any gels throughout the whole time. She relied on things like chews and mix in her bottles. This whole section from the last checkpoint into the finish is actually incredibly fast. Not only is it very much net downhill, which is the only section for the entire course that's net downhill, but you're on a very smooth and fast dual carriageway road. Our side was always closed off when the other side sometimes was actually open, but you never had to worry about cars. I had a quick look at the stats to see just how we did on this section, and we were 16 minutes up on the average time for a woman to do the final section. So we did it 16 minutes faster than the average for the 67 women that managed to finish the race. It felt like we got into a really good rhythm on this last section, pulling from the checkpoint to the finish. I'm not going to lie, Paris definitely was the stronger cyclist, and no shame whatsoever, I sat on her wheel for most of it. She definitely got the bit and started charging closer we got to the line, and you could see just how excited she was. Probably got a little bit too excited as she left me for dust and kind of crossed the finish line on her own. Let's have a quick look at the stats though. By this point we end up kind of well ahead, 54 minutes ahead of the cutoff, which is just crazy considering that at one point we were behind. So between the last two checkpoints we put on a ton of time and kind of it ended up being quite comfortable. Here's Paris completely emptying the tank and dropping the watt bombs as we head down the final funnel towards the finish line. Massive kudos to her as she crosses the finish line. Only 67 women managed to finish the Mallorca 312 out of the 1,500 people that finished the entire 312 event. So let's look at her time, 13:07 from the gun, but more importantly it was 12:52 if you take on the fact that it took us 15 minutes just to get over the start line at the beginning of the day. Now let's have a quick look at what our actual rolling time was. It was about 11 hours 55 minutes. Paris and I had some discrepancy in our elevation. I think hers was a bit more than mine, but ultimately you can see that we spent nearly an hour at all the stops. So if you're going to try and do the 312, stop management and checkpoints are super important.
I don't know how that happened. Oh, no idea how that happened. Oh, what a day.
Max, I actually can't believe we've done it.
I know. I think we crushed it as well. I'd love something to eat. I'm fucked.
Yeah. Right, we're done. I can't actually believe we've finished this. Max?
That's insane. That is nuts. That hurt a lot. That really hurt.
Yeah, my legs. I think my toe's going to fall off.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Oh.
Si Dalia puedes dar aquí unos tickets que no tiene inicio.
Max, I kid you not, I don't think my foot's okay. Right, you're fucked.
That really, unbelievably hurt.
Put this on. Yay!
Like insane. Like absolutely insane.
Genuinely, I can't believe we've actually done it. Honestly. Well done. We did it, Maxie. Let's go get pizza.
That means we never have to do it again.
I want to do it again.
You don't. You didn't want to do it the first time.
I think I've just weaved myself.
It'd be wicked if you get that right on my nose. Do I look good?
No. I'm not going to take my helmet off. I can't.
Oh.
I'm going to look tragic. I know I've got snot all over my face.
Right guys, it's at this point that we say a big thank you for anyone that stuck around to watch, and hopefully this video has been helpful and you've got a better idea of how the 312 works, which race is best for you, and how you can actually complete the 312 itself. Big thank you to some of the people that have helped us along the way. Sportful, HJC, Sidi, MV Bikes, Saddleback for sure have really helped us, given us some kit, and they've definitely made our journey a lot easier and more enjoyable. So here you go, here's Paris's extra bonus content talking about donuts. Thanks so much guys, we will see you on the next one.
So, we've come back to the car because both of our phones are dead. Both of our phones are dead, so we couldn't really do anything, and it was a faff to leave our bikes in the bike bit. So I think we're going to just sort the bikes out and head back. We are both fucking dead, aren't we?
Agreed.
Have you had your victory donut?
Not yet.
Right, so every day we've been riding, I need to just clean this. Every day we've been riding, Max and I, Max and I have licked pastries. My face is so salty. Max and I have licked pastries from breakfast, and I don't like the donuts, but Max calls them victory donuts, and he's had one after every single ride. And in this magic Tupperware box. Oh, they're going to be hot. We have 2 chocolate things and a very sticky victory donut. Go on, Max.
Give me a minute.
Okay.